Police released the names of the 10 people who were killed in an explosion in County Donegal on Friday. They include a 5-year-old girl and her father, and a mother and her 13-year-old son.
It has a huge impact to a small rural community. They are all local people. They are all very much involved in the community. They were all people who were shopping in their local shop.
We'll bring you the latest on the police investigation. Also on the programme, at least 17 people die as Russian missiles hit homes in the middle of the night in the southern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia. And we're on board a flight carrying UK weapons destined for the Ukrainian front line, the first time the Ministry of Defence has allowed access. And Max Verstappen reigns supreme in Japan to win the F1 World Championship for a second time, despite atrocious conditions. Good afternoon. Police in the Republic of Ireland have named the 10 people who were killed by an explosion at a petrol station in a village in County Donegal. The victims include a 39-year-old woman and her 13-year-old son, and a 50-year-old man and his 5-year-old daughter. Police also confirmed that a man in his 20s remains in hospital in a critical condition. 7 other people who were injured in the explosion are still being treated in hospital and remain in a stable condition. Well, our Ireland correspondent Chris Page is at the scene for us now. Chris.
Yes, Rita, this has been a day when this community has been contemplating the scale of the losses that occurred here in a split second on Friday afternoon. As you can see behind me, the petrol station where the explosion happened is less busy. There are now just 2 police vehicles there. The ambulances and fire engines have gone as the investigation moves into another phase. But the priority very much has been offering support to the grieving families. Councillors and other health workers have been in Creeslough today to do just that. And the names of those who died were made public just a few hours ago. The youngest victim was Shauna Flanagan Garway, who was 5. She was killed along with her dad, Robert. A mum and her son also died together, Catherine O'Donnell and 13-year-old James Monaghan. The other teenager who lost her life was Leona Harper. She was 14, a keen sports fan and a promising rugby player. There were 5 more victims: Jessica Gallagher, James O'Flaherty, Martin McGill, Martina Martin and Hugh Kelly. This village has much mourning ahead. The emergency services operation is over, but the trauma will last for years.
We are broken and hurting.
Churchgoers this morning said the raw reality was hitting hard.
Sure. What can you say? Like, it's just a tragedy and there's no words for it.
All we can do is pray for the people that has died and their families and the people's injured. It's
just lucky that we weren't caught up in it. That's the way everyone feels. Just lucky that we weren't there at that time.
It's thought all of those who died were probably in the garage shop or the flats above. There's been speculation a gas leak caused the explosion. Police say they don't know at this stage. There's never been an investigation like this because Donegal has never faced such a sudden tragedy.
It has a huge impact to a small rural community. They are all local people. They are all very much involved in the community. They were all people who were shopping in their local shop.
The most unexpected and horrific of moments has inflicted immense loss on Creeslough. Friends, neighbours and families are seeking comfort in each other. 10 candles on the church altar are the focus of unspeakable grief for each person gone from here. Well, when those 10 photographs of the victims were released, that triggered a fresh wave of sympathy across the island of Ireland. So many messages of condolence have been sent here. And the leader of the Irish government, Micheál Martin, when he visited the scene last night, said he also appreciated the support he'd been offered from the UK. The Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has tweeted that she is shocked and saddened by the tragic loss of life here in County Donegal.
Chris, many thanks. At least 17 people have been killed by Russian missile strikes in the middle of the night in the city of Zaporizhia. President Zelensky condemned the attack as absolute evil. Russia claimed this afternoon it was targeting a military facility. The latest strikes came hours after the 12-mile-long bridge linking Russia to occupied Crimea was badly damaged by an explosion. Our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams reports now from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv.
In Zaporizhia, this is what escalation looks like. A gaping hole where once there were homes. Rescue workers searching for the dead and the living. Moments after the blast, in the middle of the night, stunned, furious reactions. They destroyed a building at night at 2 a.m., he says. They simply destroyed a multi-story building.
We ran out into the street. When we left the corridor, a neighbor ran out with her eldest son, and she screamed that her husband was dead, and the whole wall was torn out. Their apartment fell into ours.
This was a civilian area, not a military target. Volunteers helped to clear the rubble. Local officials say scores of people were wounded. This industrial southern city is used to being hit, but its civilians are now bearing the brunt of Russia's anger. More than 60 killed in and around the city in the past 9 days. Officials say 12 missiles were fired from Russian warplanes flying safely over nearby occupied territory. Here in Kyiv, President Zelensky said these were merciless strikes on peaceful people. This, he said, was absolute evil perpetrated by savages and terrorists. It all came less than 24 hours after yesterday's dramatic attack on a key bridge linking Russia with the Crimean Peninsula. Russia said this was the result of a truck bomb. Others spoke of an audacious act of Ukrainian sabotage. Kyiv is keeping mostly quiet. Some road traffic has resumed. The physical damage can be repaired, but this was a profound psychological blow for Moscow. Up above, work on the ravaged railway bridge goes on. Russia says freight and passenger services have resumed. This bridge is vital to Moscow's war effort. It cannot afford to lose it. Paul Adams, BBC News, Kyiv.
Well, as the war in Ukraine grinds on, the UK is continuing to play its part in sending weapons. For the first time since the conflict began in February, the Ministry of Defence has allowed the BBC on board a flight to deliver the armaments, as Duncan Kennedy reports.
In the 21st century, power comes in boxes. Lots of boxes. This is the first time since the start of the war the media have been allowed to film this huge and sensitive supply operation. The officer in charge says it's about showing the full scale of the UK's help to Ukraine.
We stand absolutely united with Ukraine in defence of freedom and democracy and a nation's right to be sovereign.
It's late afternoon when we leave Brize Norton. We've not been told where we're going to protect the safety of the crews who fly these missions.
EZ-23 Yankee Victor descent, flight level 2.
The contents of many of these boxes are a secret, but we're told some are holding Brimstone anti-tank missiles. Figures released by the Ministry of Defence show that the UK has now sent 10,000 anti-tank missiles to Ukraine, 100,000 artillery rounds and nearly 3 million small arms rounds.
Neptune 05 Kilo redirect.
For the crews, who we can't name for safety reasons, these trips are exhausting.
And you can just continue on doing this. This is an open-ended thing.
We're in a position at the moment we can carry on doing this, treating this as an open-ended task.
It's dark when we land, and the task of offloading is fast and efficient. This flight alone is carrying 12 tons of weapons.
These missions are so sensitive, we can't even say where we've landed or what country we're in. All we can say is that we're somewhere in Eastern Europe.
These weapons will soon be in Ukrainian hands on the front line. something the crew say is a fight they also believe in.
They should be allowed to run their country and govern their country the way that they want to. If that's being oppressed, I think it's important in the world that we stand up to that. And obviously, as part of the UK Defence Mission, that's what we're tasked to do.
Cargo down, doors up.
50 to 7 flight level 15.
It's late into the night when we head back to the UK. Britain has now flown more than 100 of these flights. Many more will follow.
70 knots.
Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
3 former Conservative leadership contenders who lost to Liz Truss have asked colleagues to rally round the Prime Minister and end the disunity affecting the party. It's being seen as a concerted effort to try to put an end to party divisions that have seen Labour open up a 30-point lead in some opinion polls. Well, our political correspondent Ian Watson is here with me. And Ian, no coincidence this?
Absolutely not, Rita. There's a coordinated call for unity after a Conservative conference which saw open disagreements. And a senior ally of Liz Truss was saying to me the fact that former leadership contenders, Suella Braverman, Penny Mordaunt, Nadine Zahawi, were behind these calls showed that Liz Truss had now at least put a cap on cabinet dissent. But she has plenty of non-cabinet dissenters as well. And some of them say this need for public declarations of support so soon into her premiership demonstrates not strength but vulnerability. Now, the message from number 10 to these MPs is quite simply this: that unless they get behind Liz Truss, they risk putting Keir Starmer in Downing Street, propped up by the SNP. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, in a BBC interview, said today she detested the Tories, later clarifying she detested their policies. But Labour say there'll be no deal with the SNP. They believe now that they can beat Liz Truss on their own.
Ian, many thanks. Ian Watson. In Iran, the state-run television channel has been hacked to broadcast a protest against the country's government and supreme leader. Viewers saw the usual live programming interrupted without warning. The images show Ayatollah Ali Khamenei with a target on his head, along with pictures of women said to have been killed by police, and captions encouraging people to join demonstrations. Time for all the sport now. Here's Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes, who's at the BBC Sports Centre. Lizzie.
Thank you, Rita. Good afternoon. Max Verstappen has won a second successive Formula One world title. He triumphed in atrocious conditions at the Japanese Grand Prix, overcoming torrential rain and more scoring confusion to wrap up the championship with 4 races to go. Ollie Foster reports.
Max Verstappen has retained his world title fair and square and with plenty to spare. No final lap dramas like last year when Formula One veered away from its own rules. But there was still confusion at Suzuka. Torrential rain had shortened the Japanese Grand Prix, and he presumed, as most did, that despite taking the checkered flag, his winning points would be halved as well. He was wrong, and when Charles Leclerc was bumped down to third for cutting a corner, Verstappen was told mid-interview that the title was his again.
What can I say? Incredible, of course. Very special also to do it here in front of all the Japanese fans. Incredible.
The race will also be remembered for a chaotic first lap and an incident that's being investigated as a matter of urgency. 8 years after Jules Bianchi collided into a recovery vehicle and died on the same track, Pierre Gasly had a near miss this time. Bianchi's father joined the criticism of race organisers, saying they had no respect for the life of the drivers or respect for Jules' memory. As well as crowning the 2022 champion today, Formula One's launched a thorough review of the Suzuka Grand Prix, and they'll hope that the last 4 races of the season are much smoother than this one. Ollie Foster, BBC News.
Wales beat Scotland 18 points to 15 in their Women's Rugby Union World Cup opener in New Zealand, but they left it late in what's expected to be a crucial game for both sides in a very tough pool. Joe Curry reports.
It may be their opening game of the World Cup, but in the tough terrain of Pool A, defeat for Scotland or Wales would make a route through to the knockout stages an uphill battle. Plenty of pressure then, which Wales rode the better in the opening minutes. Before Scotland bit back, their forwards forcing their way over the line and Lana Skeldon getting her team on the scoreboard. And that woke Wales up once more. Kayleigh Powell on the end of this well-worked try as they increased their lead. In a frustrating first half, a few opportunities for Scotland, their chance to reduce the gap before the break went begging. After the restart, though, they found a breakthrough, with Wales a player down, Megan Gaffney touched down in the corner to give her side hope. And minutes later, she was in again to set up a huge final few minutes. Helen Nelson had missed all 4 of her kicks in this game so far. Could she produce a sensational finish? She couldn't, but Wales could. A last-minute penalty awarded, Kira Bevan shouldering the pressure, snatched victory with the last kick of the game. The celebrations that followed, worthy of winning the cup themselves. Jo Curry, BBC News.
England's cricketers showed their credentials ahead of this month's T20 World Cup by beating the holders Australia in the first match of their mini-series. Alex Hales staked his claim to be Jos Buttler's first-choice opening partner by thumping 84 off 51 balls as England went on to win by 8 runs in Perth. There are 4 games in the Premier League today. Arsenal can go top again if they beat Liverpool. But earlier, Crystal Palace came from a goal down to beat Leeds United 2-1 at Selhurst Park. It's Palace's first win in 5 league games. Well, all the scores are on the BBC Sport website, including the latest from Arsenal, where it's 1-1. And you can also see who the home nations have drawn in their Euro 2024 qualifying groups. But that's it from me. Back to you, Rita.
Thank you, Lizzie. And that's it from us. We are back with the late news at 10. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Bye-bye.